Okay, everyone, I have on Ciara Burton today, and I'm so excited to chat with her. She is a life coach for moms, which is amazing. She has a great program called Becoming Her, which we will talk about. But just helping moms transform their anxiety, evolve their careers, deepen their relationships, reignite passion in their marriage, and discover an overall sense of freedom and flow. And hearing that description, like who couldn't use at least one, if not
Mhm.
more, of those things? So I'm really excited to dive into it with Sierra today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And if we can, inspire one soul just to take a couple steps forward in her life, in her career, in her relationship, we've done our job here. So I'm excited just to see how this conversation unfolds.
Yeah, me too. I always love to start with how you got into the work before we actually dive into the work that you do.
I love that. Okay, so I have been coaching and training since 2009. So, in all the institutions that I've been certified by, I ended up going back to support and train within them in my earlier years. And I thought that because of all the work I had done on myself and I had done with others, I had worked with over 800 clients at the time. I felt that I was wholly equipped for motherhood. I had felt like I really confronted my deepest fears. I worked to heal relationships with people that were heavy and hard. And I felt ready, to be a mom and to do it the way I wanted to do it. And it's funny because when we have an idea of how we think it's going to go, usually that's when life shows us that we have a little more to learn. And so I'm convinced now that we are here as souls to learn and grow, and our growth is never done.
Hmm.
And so, how I specifically created Becoming Her, it was really out of my own need and my own metamorphosis into motherhood. And like I said, I mustered up the courage to have a home birth and to sort of do motherhood the way I had envisioned I wanted to. And I didn't realize I would be sent into the depths of my own despair after healing from the birth and really questioning my relationship to my faith and to God and my creator. I really felt pretty quickly lost, lonely, and uncertain about how I was actually going to make it through, even the next day. And so, looking back, I was definitely experiencing postpartum anxiety and depression. But really, I think overall, from a macro perspective, I was just becoming Ciara as a mother, a caretaker to a soul who is also here to learn and grow. And what I needed to do is climb out of the trenches, the metaphorical trenches of my life where I felt lonely, disconnected, and really waiting for that person to come rescue me, which was my husband, unfortunately. And I think we all learn as women and moms that it's not our husband's job to fix us. It's not our husband's job to come to our rescue. But at that time, I really felt it was his
Hmm.
responsibility to know what was going on within me.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like we went from being so interconnected, almost finishing each other's sentences before parenthood, to then entering into parenthood. And he didn't really have any idea how to support me, how to help me, what to ask or what to do. So he started to become a little more silent within himself, sort of afraid because he didn't know how to approach me. And so, going back to the trenches, my life started to change when I decided that it was time to take full radical responsibility for my life, my family's life, and my happiness and my marriage. And what that meant was putting on my metaphorical combat boots and climbing out of the trench on my own. And there was a key moment where I made that decision to climb out of that trench. And that's really when everything changed. And keep in mind, I was still coaching, training. I was
Hmm.
training sales teams at the time, and some of the distinctions that I still teach mothers in authenticity, in using your voice to speak your truth. So I was still operating, functionally operating in a lot of different areas of my life. So no one really knew the depths of the suffering that was actually happening within me.
Hmm.
So a lot of this was really silent behind the scenes. I was still able to show up. And that's why I was really questioning, is this anxiety? Is this depression? And I didn't really have a clear answer. Meanwhile, I was seeking help through homeopathy. But what really made the difference was personal responsibility, and learning how to come home to myself and getting to know the woman that I really am underneath the stories I told myself and underneath other people's expectations of me and who I thought I needed to be in my roles as a wife, as a woman, as a mother, as a coach, all the
Mhm.
many roles that I played. And so, really, the last decade has been an unwinding of a lot of those stories. And I think the work is never done, like I started off in saying, but little by little by little, 1% more every day, like a roller coaster going up a hill, I feel like I become more free. I become more free and more in touch with just the unique qualities that make me me. And as I've leaned into those, I have felt a kind of fulfillment that I didn't even know existed. And so in my story, I just share that the depths of darkness really are equivalent to the height of your light. And so for anyone listening who's feeling like they're in a dark time, I promise you that there's a lot to learn in that experience. And as you unpack those lessons, you are getting that much closer to experiencing the height of your own light. And eventually you won't need to revisit the depths of that darkness. You can claim your light and learn how to hold it. And that's what I teach women to do now.
That's amazing. I feel like listening to your story, there's so many parts of it that not only I can relate to, that I'm sure like several listeners can relate
Mm-hmm.
to. I also heard you on another podcast. Like my daughter, my firstborn was also in the NICU, and
Okay.
I heard you sharing your story of yours, and I feel like that really also impacted my postpartum anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
like being a birth worker and having like a little bit of a coaching background. I too also thought that I had this, like I
Yeah.
got this. And then when my firstborn was born, it was like in the height of COVID, she was in the NICU, the intrusive thoughts that started happening, the anxiety, like also like questioning my faith, which is still kind of like a struggle that I'm going with through a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. But I just like relate to so much of that of what you're saying because like I didn't realize at the time like how hard I got hit with my
Mm-hmm.
first. Like, holy crap. Um, and and I would love for you to touch on too, like maybe a little bit of how depression and anxiety can show up in motherhood, and the differences. Because I feel like we're living in this anxiety culture, this anxiety mom culture, where it is that go, 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 that comparison, what's next, type of thing that I think truly impacts us way more than what we think. Um, but I think some of my healing from my first also came with having my second and
Mm-hmm.
preparing for that differently, and then having a completely different experience, and completely also like letting go of a lot. And I've talked before about like surrendering versus suffering. And I feel like
Yeah.
that was the difference with my second versus my first. Um, but again, the work's never done, right? Like it's like a continual process and there's always going to be things that come up. But um I was somebody who never struggled with anxiety to my knowledge
Mm-hmm.
before becoming a mom. Like my husband and I are like polar opposites. So like he's more the worry wart and I'm like, it'll work out, whatever. I'm very go with the flow, not worried about anything. And then enter motherhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy crap. Again, like my anxiety, I feel like is like a little bit different and it's changed a lot like over the last few years. I feel like it's gotten better, but um how it showed up for me was just like this new feeling that I had never experienced. Um yeah, I never really had a care in the world. Like I think also my faith was like super strong. So I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
just always had the mentality that everything's going to work out. I had been in places where I had made great money. I'd been in a place where I made no money and just trusted and everything had always worked out. Um, and so I didn't know if this was going to work out, like, am I cut out for this? How is this going to happen? Like, the intrusive thoughts. But I think that is something that does hit a lot of people really, really hard. And the men too. Like you're saying, like
Yeah.
your husband learned to kind of be silent because he didn't know what to do. I think that's also like a piece that's not talked about a lot. They're not really a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I would love to speak to that and then go back to anxiety and depression and what you asked originally.
Yeah.
So, one thing that's really interesting about human beings, but let's keep it to the husband, is when you stay silent for too long, eventually the emotion will want to be emoted. And unfortunately, what that will look like is the silent suffering will actually turn into anger, something extremely strong, almost as if the volcano is ready to erupt. And so it's really important when we're talking about emotions to just understand that emotions really want to be in motion, energy in motion. We want to learn how to healthfully process them through us. So my husband went from being silent for a handful of years, literally doing whatever he could around the house to help, thinking that that is what I needed. But that wasn't what I needed. I needed somebody to hear me. Needed somebody to really ask and know how to listen to the pain that was living deep within. I needed somebody to go just a little bit deeper when saying, "How was your day?" and not be take it personally when I say, I actually had a really hard day. He would take it personally and he would then try to do his way around the house to help me because he thought that that was the problem, that it was too much responsibility. Cancel. That was not the problem. My soul was yearning to be heard. And so the takeaway is if you're somebody who feels like you're silently suffering, you absolutely need to find ways to allow the energy to move through, or
Mhm.
else it may manifest into anger. And if you're somebody who is already experiencing that, it's highly likely that you're yelling at your kids, you're defensive with your husband, and one of your, what I would call superpowers, being passion, is actually being mischanneled in a way that is causing harm rather than in a way that is lifting up you and the people you love most. So that's really the work that I do behind the scenes with moms is we understand, who am I really? What are my talents, gifts, and strengths? Passion is one of mine. So it makes sense that I was like a volcano too, wanting to erupt. And I really, really needed to find an outlet for that. And my husband, his journey was a little different than mine. I would say he's still on his journey. He's wowing me every single day with his devotion to his self-care practices and how he's showing up in the home. But what I really needed to do is let go and let him take the lead in his own life, right? As a coach, it can be really interesting to want to coach the
Yeah.
people you love.
Mhm.
And a couple of years ago, I said, that's not my job. And that was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders to not make it my mission to fix or change him. We have a
Mhm.
really healthy non-codependent dynamic, and our children really are thriving in this environment that we've created for them. But it took a lot of work interpersonally for both of us. And then together, we're that much stronger. So I want to go back and talk about what is the difference between anxiety and depression. I think this is really helpful to know because I feel like sometimes women just feel like, gosh, this must be anxiety. And then they sort of leave it there. But anxiety really is an experience of future pacing. So if you can see me on video right now, I have my hands right in the center of my heart, almost in a prayer. And this symbol right here is what I like to use to describe 0 point frequency. It means present moment awareness. So it's really the no thinking, the non-thought. It means being the observer of your mind and not lost in your thoughts. So we call this in Becoming Her neutrality. This is really that space where you can just generate that deep breath and this inner awareness that it's all okay. I'm okay. You can feel that inhale just fill you up. And a lot of people, a lot of moms don't even know how to get here, don't know how to get to this beautiful space I call neutrality, the no thought. They can't get their brain to stop thinking. So if you are questioning whether or not you're experiencing anxiety or depression, anxiety is future pacing. That's living over here. That's thinking about what could be someday. That's thinking about worst case scenario. That's even thinking about what's to come later on in that day. And then you feel a certain way about it. So you're fearing the future, or you're fearing this encounter you might have with a loved one that you don't have a great relationship with at some point this summer. You're fearing it like 3 months in advance.
Mhm.
This is a function of the mind. And as you said, you're not a worrier. I I was, when I was in high school, I wouldn't sleep before tests. So I'm naturally a little more type A, a little more anxious. And I can confidently say that doesn't rule or run my life anymore at all. But it took reps. Now I'm flexing my bicep because you can't have biceps for summer if you only go to the gym once. You have to continue to get your reps in new ways of being and in new ways of living, because your unconscious self is the part of you that is in operation most of the time. That's the part of you that learned through watching your own parents. And you
Right.
said you wanted to talk about the mother wound today, and I'll just plant a seed and maybe we can revisit it later. But you may want to look at how your mother raised you or how your father raised you. If you're wondering, how did I get this operation system? It makes sense to me when I look back to the past and I see what behaviors were modeled to me that I picked up, I adopted that modeling. And that is my mode of operation. Well, I have good news. Your mode of operation can change, and it's through accessing the conscious mind and through recognizing that in every circumstance, at all times, we always have a choice. But we can't get to that awareness of having a choice if we don't know how to get to neutrality, 0 point frequency, where we literally are the observer of our reality. You are the observer of the chaos that ensues around you, and you are non-triggered by it, but you can feel simultaneously your triggers wanting to come up. So that's where we have to build muscle in the healing process. Now, depression is an experience of thinking about the past. So this can even be the recent past. Let's say you got to get out of the house by 8 a.m. to get your kids to camp. And it's 7:53 and you're like, dang, we have so much to do to get out of this house. And all you can think about is how you're not going to make it out by 8 a.m. So now the kid comes down and he's not dressed, and you just burst into yelling, into manipulating, into controlling. And what that might look like is, my son's name is Theo, so I'll use his name as an example. I might say something like, Theo, we got to go. Get your shoes on. Come on, buddy. We got to leave. It's almost 8 a.m. And that, I think we all know as mothers, doesn't actually really help the situation. It doesn't actually help you get out the door by 8 a.m. Usually it makes you even a little bit later, because the kids don't know how to respond when their nervous system shifts into fight or flight. When their nervous system is stunned and they're like, oh, they can't access the other part of their brain that will actually help them do the things they need to do to get out in time. So now your reaction is creating a fight or flight response in them. And they can't even think about what's next because they're not in that part of their brain. They're in the part of the reactionary brain where they just want to argue back with you. So now we have two people who are arguing and we still have to get out of the house by 8 a.m. Cancel, cancel. All of this can be unwound pretty easily. And it starts with the mother stepping into her own leadership. So depression is the experience of having a moment like that and then thinking about it all day. So you're experiencing guilt and shame based on a past experience. Well, I think a lot of people think of depression as many past experiences or past experiences from the way back. And you may have even been somebody who's grown up with a lot of darkness and weightedness on your shoulders. But that is also due to the programming that was shown to you. So if your parents raised you in causing you to maybe think back, apologize, take responsibility, or maybe they pointed a finger and made you wrong and told you how to do it better next time. You've been taught to think about the past over and over and over again, rehearsing it. And that creates that feeling of heaviness. And that creates that mismanaged mind that's lost now in the past. And for mothers in particular, where we experience it on the day-to-day, which only makes the depression you're already experiencing even worse, is through guilt and shaming ourselves. I wish I wouldn't have said that. How come I can't control my tongue? He didn't deserve that. And so now you're thinking about that all day while he's probably let it go and is having fun at camp because he's not as conditioned as you are to feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Are you with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. I feel like though, like maybe we all have micro moments like that, but it doesn't necessarily like have to linger. Cause I mean, I've definitely had moments of like, man, like I shouldn't have yelled at her. You know, like I feel like we definitely all have moments of experiencing those things. And I guess it's just kind of like the whether we're holding on to it or not.
Yeah, and you're somebody who has already said you don't hold on to a whole lot.
Yeah.
So you're conditioned to really, you know how to let go. And I hope you can see in this dialogue that that really is a superpower
Hmm.
because it allows you to kind of take off that energetic weight of guilt and you can just let the past be in the past. So I acknowledge you. I see you for that. And I wasn't able to do that until I did this work that is now a part of who I am. I couldn't stop thinking about, how I could do better, be better, because perfectionistic tendencies were definitely part of my past. And I had this vision of who I wanted to be as a mom, and I just felt like I was falling short. And that's all I could think about. And then I would want to manipulate the day in order to come back from that tough moment earlier so I could be the mom I wanted to be. That is so much work.
Hmm.
That is so much work. But I didn't know there was another way. And I didn't know that I could let go of my thoughts the way that you know you can do, because that's part of how you are made. You're able to let go more easily. And you
Hmm.
teach it in your birthing experiences with other moms. I'm sure you talk about surrender, probably every day.
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit. It doesn't mean like though that I've mastered it at all because
Yeah.
like as you were saying in the beginning, like kind of doing the self-work before, like I definitely did all of that, but motherhood has been a whole new beast for me that has brought up things that I had zero idea were there. So many things that
Mm.
that I've had to work through. But when you were talking about like your thoughts, I brought up this book in another episode recently, but um one that like helped me really see that like you're not your thoughts, just being an observer was The Untethered Soul.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that book?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time that I was like, I actually read it on our honeymoon. And being like, whoa, like I didn't know that I could just observe my thought and that it really doesn't define me. It can even have nothing to do with me. Like it's just like a floating thought to let go. Um, and I definitely feel like that's something that I need to work on again because again it's like I feel like you've done a lot of work and then something new happens in your life and like my role as a person has changed. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about things before because it was just me. Like I got married in my early 30s. Up until that point I did whatever I wanted. I wasn't responsible for another human's life.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge like holy crap for me. um but motherhood has brought up a lot. Like I didn't most people who know me would not say that I'm like an angry person at all, but a lot of anger
Mm.
came up for me, a lot of things. Um like I said that I just didn't even know were there. And so it's nice to have a sounding board as my husband because he's been very helpful. But I also like completely resonate with what you said, like being married to like a life coach. Like um, there's been moments with him where I'm like, don't coach me right now. I just need you to be
Yeah.
like, that sucks. That's
Yeah.
all I need you to say is like, wow, that sucks. And I'm like, thank you. It does, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so but also like, I feel like the work has come in where when I am angry and I can recognize that it's like, this has nothing to do with you or this situation. Like, this is something being triggered in me of my self worth, of the
Mm-hmm.
lies that I believe about myself. And I just think that motherhood brings a lot of that up because of the culture that we're in, too. Like, it's the comparison, there's a course on every single thing. So, are you
Yeah.
doing it right? And we just compare and we don't have the community that we're meant to have in this season. And that can feel very isolating, as you felt. And I think so many women feel that way, even if they do have friends or people in their life, they just feel so isolated in this season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think too, we're inundated with so much noise and we don't realize that we're choosing it, but we are. So every time
Yeah.
you open the app, a lot of times people are opening the app because it's their autopilot just pattern.
Right.
It becomes a pattern. And when it becomes a pattern for me, that's when I just take 3 days off and
Yeah.
reset, because I only open my Instagram app with intention. I don't like surf or scroll, because that takes me into really an unconscious time waster
Yeah,
when there's
totally.
quite a lot I want to do with the free space that I have in my brain, which is limited.
Right.
And so I think like one of the most important things to consider is we are in the world, but we're not of the world. We
Yeah.
are souls inhabiting like a physical human body, and we need the space to hear ourselves. And I think motherhood is a very beautiful opportunity to trigger us in great ways, because it's allowing us to grow pretty exponentially, pretty quickly. And I love that now about motherhood, because I feel like I'm growing into the woman I've always envisioned I could be through the struggles and the obstacles and the joys that I'm experiencing in motherhood. And so for the woman listening who feels like she's that person who's kind of unconsciously scrolling whenever she has a free minute, that's a really easy place to just push pause. Pick up the phone, notice you're opening the app, and just put it down. Go walk outside, listen to the birds, notice the things that you're not normally noticing. Feel the wind on your skin and the breeze on your face and the sun just kissing your body. We're missing these moments that are available to us often, that we're not even noticing because we're living in our own heads. And if you just get outside, put your feet on the earth, and just feel what is real and true in that moment, there's not a lot that's real and true. My feet are on the earth. I can hear the birds. I can feel the sun on my face,
Right.
and I can breathe. We need more moments like that. A lot of people think that they need to go on like a sabbatical from work. They need to go on like a 3-day retreat, which I offer retreats. So I think that they're amazing, but I don't think it's wise to go on a retreat because you need to run away from something. I think you need to work with your challenges and work with your circumstances to find that which you need. Inner peace in this example, a deep breath in this example. So taking those moments to tune out the noise, your own noise, and really be with reality exactly as it is. My feet are on the ground. I can hear the birds. I can feel the sun. Or even when you're doing the dishes, this is a really good analogy I bring up in the course often. The tool is called Just Be with the Dish. And it means don't listen to podcasts, really no music, just be with reality exactly as it is. I am feeling the water. The water is warm. I like this temperature. Oh, I can smell that soap. I don't normally smell the soap, and it's because you're not paying attention. You're not being with the dish. The more you can practice being in reality exactly as it is, noticing sounds, noticing smells, feeling the sun on your skin, feeling your feet on the earth, the more present you're going to be able to be with the people you love most. So I say doing the dishes is really a training ground. It's you developing that muscle to be able to hold presence, to be able to live without that mind constantly chattering. Just like you said, we are not our thoughts. And we really are called to detach ourselves from them, because
Yeah.
our thoughts are creating the friction that is
Mm-hmm.
living within. And most of the time, they are not real and true. So then the question could be, what is real and true when it comes to my thoughts? And the coolest part about that, when you get to that point, is you can actually start to create your own thoughts that are in alignment with a higher vision that you have for your life. And that's inspiring. That's an inspiring way to wake up in the morning. A lot of
Yeah.
people are waking up for the routine and waking up even to their kids' needs.
Yeah.
Cancel, cancel.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure you're positioning your mind toward possibility and towards something that inspires you.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you're already in victim consciousness. You're already in that space and place where you're in service to others before you've even given yourself to be in service, before you've even given yourself the opportunity to be in service to yourself, which is going to make you a leader and a better mom, a mom you're proud of in your home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I feel like for people listening, they can be like, yeah, that sounds like easy to do. But it's also like, I think some people might think that it's like almost silly to do that. but I think that there's like so much to it. Like I've noticed for myself, because for me, when I'm doing the dishes, I usually am listening to a podcast, or
Mhm.
that's when I like unwind and like we'll watch a Netflix show or something. Because my house has just been like chaos all day long, So it's like, okay, I just need whatever. But when you actually do take, I notice for myself, because I find it hard to do that. I
Mhm.
really, really struggle with that. Um, but I've noticed for myself that when I do, I feel so much better. Like even yesterday, the girls were inside and I'm like, I'm just going to walk out to the garden by myself. And I just like walked out there barefoot, picked a couple cucumbers and just like got a little bit of fresh air. And it just like, it was so nice just to do that, to just focus on what I was doing and to not worry about anything else. Um, and I've noticed for myself again, like I really, really struggle with that. I really struggle with putting down the noise, taking a few moments. But when I do, I 1,000% feel the difference. And every single time I do, I'm like, why don't I do this more?
Exactly. And let's talk about why that's important. Because I know it sounds silly. And I
Yeah,
use these silly examples because I want people to see how basic it is and how you don't need to meditate for 60 minutes to feel better.
right.
You can literally let the dishes be an act of meditation where you're just tuning into reality, tuning into what is, getting out of the thoughts in your mind. So, the reason why this is imperative is because when the body, mind, and soul are not in homeostasis, which means they're not operating harmoniously together, the body will harbor dis-ease, lack of ease, stress. And ultimately, that will show up in things that I think none of us really want, actual disease in our body. And so, the way to heal from stress, from lack of ease, dis-ease, is to bring your body into alignment with the mind and soul. When our minds are overactive, we're almost disconnected from our bodies. And that's probably why it feels so good to you to go outside and put your feet on the earth and to pick a cucumber. You've gotten out of your mind and you've gotten into your body. You're already on a pathway very quickly to homeostasis. And little moments of homeostasis where we're out of fight or flight and we're out of do mode, we can enter into be mode. And
Yeah.
so the distinction here is be more. We have to learn how to be more in our lives and do less. So doing the dishes is just a cue, a daily cue, because most of us do them, that will support you in learning how to be more and do less. And you're getting the dishes done. But it's what we're doing is we're directing the mind to what is. The water is warm. I'm using the soap. I'm washing the dish in a circular manner. I'm putting the dish in the dishwasher. We really have to train the system to get out of fight or flight so that it can get into rest and digest. A body that is operating with a nervous system that is in rest and digest is in constant healing mode. So if someone's experiencing, you know, discomfort in their body and maybe digestion that is not optimal and maybe sleepless nights, they're already experiencing the physical reality of lack of ease now being manifested in the body. So we can release that, but we need to grow strong in getting out of fight or flight where we harbor lack of ease, where we harbor stress, and getting into rest and digest mode from a nervous system perspective. And so homeostasis, where the mind, body, and soul are aligned, where we're not up here in our head and not in our body, is where we're going to find that healing. So your example of going out to the garden is a great example. We need these moments to reset. We need these moments to get out of fight or flight.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. It's definitely, like I said, it's one of those things I'm like, why don't I do this more often? But I feel like I am like, I go through seasons. So I am trying to be like a little bit more intentional right now. Um, this like just even this morning, like I said, I usually always have like a podcast. I have something going because I
Mhm.
also have this thing where I feel like I have to continually be learning too. Like I have to listen to something educational. I have like I have to like always be absorbing information. Um and this morning I didn't and I didn't even realize that I didn't do it and it had been like an hour, and I had been like making breakfast. I'm on this like sourdough kick. So I was like doing the sourdough.
Mm,
I had like given it to the breakfast to the kids, and then I was making mine. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just quiet in here. Like the girls were quiet. They were both eating their food. Um, and it was just like silent. And I just kind of like absorbed that for a moment. I was like, wow, my house is really quiet when like nothing else is playing. Not always. It's definitely not always quiet, but they were both just like, I'm like, I need to like soak in this moment because my
mhm,
kids are very loud a lot.
mhm.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, silence. This feels so nice.
Okay,
And
so this is an example right here where silence feels like a medicine to you. Yes?
yeah,
So this is what I help people realize is like we have to find the medicines that we need. And
yeah,
this isn't traditional medicine, maybe like a something like a pill you would take.
right.
This is medicine through really connecting to yourself and identifying what your needs are. A lot
Yeah,
of people think that the answers live out there in the next pill, in the next diet plan, in the next coach, in the next therapist. But really, the answers live in here, in your own heart. And that's all I'm teaching people to do is to get connected to their hearts, to identify what they need now. So in
hmm,
that moment where you're relishing in the silence, you're having that aha experience. That's your soul communicating, we
yeah,
need more of this,
yeah,
or please. And so now it's up to you to remember that and to maybe lean in a little bit more to creating silence in the home. You know,
right.
yesterday I was driving with the kids and they're in camp right now and they're gone longer than they would normally be gone through the school day, and I was feeling like I was missing them all the while I was really valuing my time at home. And I asked myself before I picked them up, I said, how can I feel connected to them? I'm needing to feel connected to them. That's what my soul is needing now. And what I'll do sometimes is just when they get in the car, I won't have any music going, no noise at all. And we will just drive in silence. And I commit to them filling the space. I let my kids fill the space because then I'm able to peek into what's happening within their worlds.
Hmm.
A lot of us moms immediately jump to all of our question. Hi, honey, how was your day? And then we just drill, 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 but we're not giving them the opportunity to use their voice to tell us what they want to tell us. Now, I will occasionally ask like a high mileage open ended question if it's silent for a long time. But the truth is, my two boys are pretty loud and pretty active, and there's always noise in the home. So I sit in confidence that, hey, this silence is probably what they need now, too. So, how can we be connected to one another energetically without words spoken? So, I allow myself to kind of feel the urge to fill the space, and I don't. I just breathe into that urge and just allow the car ride home to be silent. It's very peaceful for all of us, and they may be needing that reset. This is an opportunity where I learn from my kids. You know, they're getting what they need now. They're silent, they are rarely silent. So I just receive with them and I sort of learn from them. But creating opportunities for them to fill the space, I think, is really important as moms. If we really want to know the souls of our children, we can
Yeah.
let them lead, let them guide so that they can know the experience of leadership. And then it's our duty to demonstrate leadership in our own lives. That doesn't mean leading them, that means just becoming the example that you want them to be for yourself in your own home.
Hmm. Yeah. That makes total sense. I love that. I love that. Giving them like the opportunity to fill the space. I think that that's also like something that we don't really think of either. I would love to touch on healing the mother wound and generational programming. I'm like big into like generational trauma and different things like that. Um, and I think that there's, even if we think like there's not certain things passed down, I definitely think that there are. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit.
Oh my goodness, we could go so many directions with this. Yes, I mean, I was reading a quote from someone else the other day, and it said something like, someone in the family needs to feel it for it to be released. And I really believe that. You know, if you start to notice the subtle energetic dynamics when you're doing this personal development work, And let's just say you're at a place in your life where you're called to open into your voice and use it a little bit more confidently. What you may have a little gut feeling about is if you just go back through the maternal lineage, you may start to notice how difficult it was for your mother to use her voice and her mother to use her voice and her mother to use her voice. And if we just look at how the world was specifically for women in the past, it was pretty hard to stand up and use our voice in the way both you and I are using it now. So in that example here, and this may not apply to everyone, when we use our voice, we're healing the generational trauma of the mothers that came before us who didn't feel like they could use theirs. Now, my mom, for example, her unconscious programming causes her to be small. So she shrinks down small like this in a contracted state, and she will not use her voice. And that's what I learned from her. So how I was able to heal that wound is, even though it's exceptionally uncomfortable for me to use my voice and to share my truth, and I've had to walk through my fear of judgment. I've had to walk through, what if someone takes it personally? I've had to walk through, what if I'm not good enough? I'd had to walk through all of these stories in working through this desire to use my voice more. And that's all part of the healing process of the wound. And as I use my voice more, and my mom now gets to do life with me, she now is using her voice more. I hosted a gathering in her backyard. I came back to Ohio for the first time in 3 years, which is where I was raised. And she hosted my clients who are local to that area and my friends and their friends in her home. And we curated this beautiful sisterhood experience. And I was so excited that my mom was going to be a part of it. And truthfully, I did not know what would come through, because we had cacao, which, if you don't know much about cacao, it is a gentle heart opener. And we stood around her kitchen and we sipped on the ceremonial grade cacao and caught up. And, I opened us in dialogue and in intention, and we all shared. And my mom was the last person to share. And everyone in the room was so moved by what she had to say and how she's learning to use her voice, and how in this chapter of her life as a 70-year-old woman, she's never been more excited and she feels like her life is starting now. And so I get teary because it's true that when we set ourselves free, we become the demonstration, and it inspires those who witness us to do the same. And to have that impact, I think, if I could only hope and pray that my children will be learning from me, but the fact that my mom is also learning from me is truly a gift I didn't expect to experience in this lifetime. And in the feedback surveys that come back from the Becoming Her community, many women share that they're having the same results, where when they go first, their mom follows. And I think that's neat, because it just shows us that the healing is actually circular, not linear. And it just takes one person to take a step forward, and that creates a ripple effect. And that ripple effect happens within the family, but it also happens outside of the family. So it's a collective healing, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. That's awesome that you were able to witness that too, and to be a part of it. I think that so many people listening would have the desire for that to happen in their family too. That, hey, maybe, like the quote, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? If you're making these changes to yourself, it is contagious. There definitely is an effect that ripples out from that. So that's really, really cool that you're able to not only be a part of it, but facilitate it as well.
Absolutely. And I think what's most surprising is hearing other people's feedback who have never gotten to know where I came from, but they've gotten to know me.
Yeah.
And when my mom shared, my jaw sort of dropped to the floor metaphorically, because I wasn't expecting that. And what I teach is this concept of expect the unexpected. And it really will surprise and delight you in the best ways. But a lot of moms might relate to expecting the unexpected almost as brace yourself, for that next moment. But there's also the equal opposite of that, where we can be surprised and delighted. And when my mom shared, I lit up because I was like, wow, I really didn't expect to hear this. And I just observed. I was just in neutrality as the silent observer. And it was really neat to hear the other women's feedback where they were saying, I can see how you came from this mother.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing that, if you were to ask me maybe a couple years ago, I would probably say, I really don't see it. Can you tell me more about that? But in this moment with her, I sort of softened into that feedback. And I thought, you know what? I really am seeing her in the light of who she is. And I didn't even say that. It was a feeling that I had. I got to see her in a new light. And that was healing for both me and everyone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the beauty of, let's call it heart-centered leadership, where we sort of put down our swords and our stories and our beliefs about other people and about ourselves, and we just commune together
Yeah.
in a space of vulnerability, in a space of just sharing our truth with one another. And so I yearn to be a part of more experiences like that with other women and moms. And I do believe the collective mother is wanting that too. I
Mm-hmm.
believe she's wanting more depth, and I believe she's wanting to feel connected to. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely. I think that, I don't know. I think that it's definitely something that I would like to see happen for sure. And I do think collectively, we don't, I'm not seeing a lot of families that I know having like deeper conversations with like the generation that came before us. It's more
Mm,
still kind of that suffering in silence, or yeah, this thing, whatever, it's just always going to be this way. And it doesn't have to be. So I do think there is that yearning for restoration and for healing in our generation and our parents. And I do think that it starts with us, because I think our parents' generation doesn't really come from like a get help, talk about your
mhm,
issues type of um type of normalcy that we have now. Now people are like, oh yeah, my therapist told me this, and it's like not weird, like you can say those things, and it's not like, wait, you go to therapy, what's wrong with you? Like most people are like, oh yeah, whatever, it's not a thing. But I still see, like, I guess, like a huge lack of it. That's why I think like what happened with your mom's so cool, because again, I just feel like so many people that I talk to, because in motherhood a lot I feel like comes up for you with
mhm,
your mom, and a lot of people I talk to are just kind of just not digging deeper, or not like taking that next step, or not um like maybe they're making changes for themselves so that they're not going to like play small. Let's say like in your
mhm.
situation, like I am going to use my voice, but I'm not going to have those conversations with my mom. So I think that, again, it's awesome that you were able to, but I think for people listening, if that is you, like that also is possible.
Yeah, 100%. I really think it's our job, as souls who are here, we are learning and growing. And when you are just doing your own work, so confronting your own stories of, I'm not enough, or how come she can do it and I can't, when we're really wrestling with our own stories and still rising to the occasion. So in this example, using our voice, we're just becoming the demonstration. We don't have
Yeah.
to call the mom. We don't have to, like, I landed in this experience, years later, where I created an event in her home and got to witness that. And I know I played a role in that, but
Hmm.
not directly, more indirectly
Yeah.
through my leadership. And I have a story, if we have time, around the
Yeah.
father wound with one of my clients, because the father wound was probably the biggest one for me in my 20s before becoming a mom. And really what it took for me was radical forgiveness around what happened and what didn't happen. And that was really hard work for me for a period of time. And I learned a lot in that time that I now can teach, like certain ways to get to that space of energetic forgiveness where we can really let go and we can learn what unconditional love really means. And there's this woman who came to my retreat a couple years ago, And on the last day, we did a forgiveness exercise and we wrote a letter to someone that we felt deep inside of us we needed to release from our hearts. And she wrote unexpectedly, she didn't expect this to come up. She wrote a letter to her dad. And this was like her moment at the retreat. We all shared at the end, and she decided she wanted to read her letter and use her voice to put this out into the space. And it was such a profound moment. She burst into tears and she read this letter, and it was such a healing. So the act of forgiveness alone was so healing for her. Fast forward, the full next year, her dad got a cancer diagnosis, and she was able to be by his bedside in another state as a working mother of two throughout all of his treatments. She happily got on a plane because she was in a lesson of learning unconditional love and forgiveness with her dad. And what's so amazing is this story has a happy ending. Her dad is doing really well and she gets to have more time with him. But she really looked at this as an opportunity while he was still here as her dad to learn unconditional love. And now she stands before us in our community as really a woman who has healed this father wound. Her dad is not perfect. He still makes choices that doesn't align with her, but she's found unconditional love for him, and she's stopped trying to fix and change him, thinking that she knows better for him than he knows better for him. Cancel. And so it's just an incredible story of a woman whose intuition said, hey, tap, we gotta forgive dad. And she leaned in and she did the hard work. And then that whole next year became one of the most transformational years of her life. Because I do think that if her dad was to depart from this earth early, she would have wholeness in her heart around that relationship. And if anyone's listening who feels like you have work to do, specifically with a parent, I encourage you to just lean in and start with a forgiveness exercise. You can work with the Ho'oponopono prayer, which I love to work with. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's like you say like, thank you, I love you, I forgive you.
Yeah. Let's talk about it right now. And I recommend just writing this letter. Just start today and start with this letter and allow your emotions to move through you, just like we were talking about before. Spend an hour with the Ho'oponopono prayer and work through each step. So the first step is, I'm sorry. So this is wild because you may be in blame and shame where you're wanting to make the other person wrong. But the first part of this forgiveness exercise is rooted in radical responsibility. Damn, that's confronting. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. What? I'm now asking you, Dad, to forgive me? What did I do? All of that stuff is going to come up, and I recommend you write it all down. You can be mad and angry that the Ho'oponopono prayer is asking you to say, Dad, please forgive me. And by the way, you don't have to send this letter. This is really for you to set yourself free from the bondage that this has over your heart. And then the next step number 3, is thank you. Thank you for the lessons learned. And write all about what you're grateful for and what you've learned from this figure in your life. And then the final step number 4, is I love you. And you can write down all the ways you love this person. And you may struggle with that one, but this is your invitation. This is really a step forward into unconditional love. Unconditional love is loving without boundaries. It's learning how to love someone even if they're flawed. It's learning how to love someone even if they're making choices that you don't like. It's just learning how to accept them for who they are and allowing them to be in life school on their own, making choices and experiencing the consequences of their actions. That's what we're all here to do. It's not my job to fix and change my dad. It's his job to decide what he wants to change and then take those steps to do that. I am free now because I've let that go. My dad is still operating in patterns with alcohol, with cigarettes. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. He's still operating in those patterns. And that's not what I see in him first. And that's not what I see in him most now. Whereas in the past, that's all I could think about. is how he needs to stop drinking. He needs to stop smoking. He needs to make better choices. He needs to take care of his health. What if he's not going to be here for my kids? I want my kids to know my dad. Cancel, cancel. Let's celebrate those moments we get to have with him, and let's learn how to love him for who he is and stop focusing on who he is not. That has been a profound shift for me. So if anyone wants to begin this journey, start with the Ho'oponopono prayer and see if you can unlock just a little bit of forgiveness. It's a process.
Yeah. 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 I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
I would love for you, before we wrap up, to tell us about your program.
Yeah. So becoming her, the next evolution is all about you having the courage to step into who you know you can be. So behind the masks you wear and behind, the emotions that you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, we follow a system to do exactly what I've spoken about in this podcast, where we're working first with the body to clear out dis-ease, lack of ease, to clear out stress, to get connected to our natural rhythms, to really inhabit this vessel that is the home for our souls. So we start with the body, we move to the mind, and we create new neural programming and pathways in the brain that support your growth rather than take you out of growth and keep you in more of the same, keep you in more of the past. And then we move to the soul. And this is what I feel separates me from any other practitioner that I know out there, is because we're diving deep into who am I really and what is my purpose and what are the values and the virtues that I'm called to grow within myself. And so we're actively creating this map. I call it a mind map that you can look to and revisit often. So when you feel like you're in reaction mode or a surprising circumstance comes up and you're noticing your unconscious programming is right there, you can just revisit this map and root into what you're really here to do. And that's to harness who you really are and let go who you're really not. And then finally is the path to sovereignty. That's the final part of the program, which is all about learning how to live with your power intact and not give it away to others. So this is really that final piece where we're letting go of people pleasing, we're letting go of judgment, we're letting go of the high expectations we put on ourselves. And we're really intending to know what it feels like to live as a liberated woman and mother. And so that's the Becoming Her program. And then I offer monthly calls thereafter. So it's an 8-week experience with me to do all that heavy lifting. So we'll confront the mother wound, we'll confront the father wound, we'll look at who were you as a kid, who are you now. We do a lot of deep work in that 8 to 10 weeks. That's why it's so different from therapy, because if you're going to therapy, you're likely going, if you're lucky, once every 2 weeks, a lot of people once a month or whenever they feel called. You're not going to get these kinds of results when you're going in that time-space sequence. When you are all into this container for an 8 to 10 week period, we're doing all the heavy lifting at once. And you don't graduate the program until we're done, until your results are had. And then after that, you go into once a month experiences with me where I'm lifting my bicep again, because you can't have biceps for summer if you only go to the gym once. That's really where we're in the mindset gym, reinforcing the distinctions you learn in the course. So that's Becoming Her. And like I said, it was born out of my own need to pull myself out of the trenches. And as I was in that process, that metamorphosis of becoming more like the Ciara that I am today, that's really where the divine download started to come in after I was reconnecting with God. Because after my birth, I sort of questioned a lot about my faith and my spirituality. And in my reconnection, in my communing with God in a healthy, pure manner, like I felt like my relationship with God was really sound and really good. It was a direct connection I was finally feeling after maybe a year or 18 months of feeling super lost. That's really where the program started to download through me. And it's a sum of my 13 or 14 years of experience, but it's also wisdom that was channeled through me at that time that I teach and share now, but with the intention to activate wisdom in you. And that's how we grow and become as women and mothers. We have to activate our own inner wisdom and stop looking out there in the external world for advice and start looking in here and trusting that we know when there's something seriously wrong with our children. And we know when we maybe just need to relax and be patient until we know what we need to do now. We
Right.
got to trust ourselves. And that's really something that is missing in the
Yeah.
collective community as mothers. We're not
Hmm.
trusting ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I say that all the time with birth too, because of the culture that we've had, we've been taught at such a young age to not trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I see that in birth when you really, really think something and then the doctor's scaring you with things that aren't even research founded or based. And you're like, do I follow my intuition? Well, what if something happens? And then that carries through birth trauma, it carries into motherhood, and the cycle just continues. So I love that you're teaching that and talking about that because it is so, so important. And again, like I said before, like once you become a mom, it's like you're just sold so much stuff of,
Hmm.
is your kid doing this right? Are you parenting this way right? Are you whatever? And it's like, stop, just stop. Like like you said, you know your kid, you know when something's wrong, you know what they need. I mean, obviously at the beginning, they're learning to try to communicate, you're learning how to like read their cues, and you're both new at it. But the best thing you can do is to tap into each other and not tap out into what the world has to say. And that was a lot of my anxiety with my first, was trying to get answers on Google versus being present
Exactly.
and being like, what does my kid need from me right now? Um, so I love all of that. And then where can people reach out to you, find out more about your program,
Yeah.
and follow you at?
Yeah. So I always give individuals an opportunity to connect with me complimentary, just to even see if what I have to offer is something that appeals to you. Like I said, it's a holistic experience. We're addressing the body, the mind, and the soul in an eight week transformational container called Becoming Her. And so the best way for you to decide whether or not it's something you're interested in is, let's have a conversation. And so I open up my calendar for 45 minutes. And in that call, we will get to the bottom of what's working and what's not. So I'll look at the energetic dynamics in your relationship, to yourself, to your husband, to your kids, to your job, to all the things, to the difficult people in your life, whatever we have time for. And we'll get really clear on some of the root causes of some of the emotions you're feeling: anxiety, depression, overwhelm, whatever it may be, confusion about your purpose. We'll get clear on some of the major themes that really ultimately become the pathways to freedom. And so we have to lean in. The only way out of the stuckness is through it. And so together in the Becoming Her container, we lean in, we lean in, we lean in, and all the while you're getting results as we go. So ciaraburton.com/apply is where you can get on my calendar. I have a few spots open every week for those calls. And I would say that's a beautiful place for us to begin our journey.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on the podcast and for your time, energy, expertise here today. I'm really excited for our listeners to listen to this. So I just want to thank you so much.
Me as well. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's been a joy.